Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Expand with Jenna Brown podcast. I'm so excited to have a new friend here with me today as a guest speaker, healer, medicine woman who I'm so excited to really dig in and hear from her. Her name is Damini Celebre, and she is a soul advocate. She wears many different hats, as many of us do that are listening. She is a beautiful medicine woman with so many modalities. So go ahead and introduce yourself, share a little bit with us about you, because we're excited to hear from you today.
Hi, everybody. I am delighted to be here. And Jenna, I'm really honored that, we get to have this conversation together.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. It's so exciting. Like many of us, we've all had this, I'm going to say inkling when we were young that we were meant to be more than the societal constructs, and so we just kept like plugging away and listening to spirit. And for me, I ended up from the artist world into the creativity world. And then finally it was spirit was like, oh no, stop these two worlds things, and combined all those modalities together. But what's true in anything that I do, I am holding space for the highest expression of each person's soul. And that's why I call myself a soul advocate. So many of you are probably resonating with that, saying, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And that's the conversation I think we're going to have today. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let's just dive right into that.
Yes.
And will you share with us how, like, your journey of essentially realizing that this was your medicine, like this was what you were here to do in this lifetime, was to be the soul advocate, hold this really powerful space, because to claim that about yourself, as I'm sure you know, is a whole journey of being like, wow, this is what I'm actually here to do. And who do I think I am? And all of those things.
Right.
What was that journey like for you?
Well, I think I always kind of back up and then go forward, right?
Yeah.
So I think as a young person, I wanted to be an artist. Like that was the thing I wanted most in the world. And, that is fraught with, honestly, a lot of inauthentic people. At least that's how I felt, at that time, in the 70s and 80s. But what really resonates with me is the spiritual side of everything.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I was a little kid healing hamsters and making mud medicine. I mean, I was 5 and I grew up in Philadelphia in the city. We had this little pile of grass where there was mud and critters.
Wow.
And, it's funny how, I had an agenda of what I wanted to do when I grew up. Right. But really what I was doing, and I've done a lot of self-reflection on that over the past couple of years, is I've always been a healer. I've always been in this deep desire to not only help, but hold space for people to kind of discover who they are. Now, the hamster, that's a whole different story, but that's been the evolution of. And, I tried the art world thing, but it just didn't resonate with me. I talk a lot about being in flow with your heart and being in flow not with your heart. And, in flow not with your heart is everything just works. So you're working so hard at something. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill.
Yeah.
Right. When you're in flow with your heart, it's just like the universe just goes, here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yes.
And yes, I'm moving my hands into the future, opening up this big, bright space. And so I think it's been an evolution of just following where spirit's leading me. And, there was this healing arts that I was really intrigued about. I was actually blessed to, I did a lot of energy medicine work in the beginning. And then I went and learned 5-element acupuncture, which is very Taoist. And Taoism, for those of you who don't know what that is, short description is how you just live into your light, and so it's not a medicine of fixing, it's a medicine of a journey of being what I call your brightest best self.
Oh God,
and so Yeah, I mean, and it is. I mean, I can go on. I'm super geeky about acupuncture, but I can leave that off to the side.
I love all the geeky. You don't have to leave it off to the side.
Okay, well, I'll just give you one geek, right?
Okay, yay.
So the acupuncture meridians, I'm sure you and your
Mm-hmm.
peeps are pretty familiar with them, but there's these points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the Taoist concept, each one of those points are there to help you walk to your next step. To your next step. And then there's points there for when you go awry and you lose your way. Those points help bring you back. And that concept of the points being this roadmap on your body is why I think the body holds the roadmap for our transformation.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I 1,000% agree. And I love that you just said that. It hit me in a really profound way, because for so many of us, I believe, especially as women, we're trained to hate our bodies our whole lives and be against them. And it's this whole process of coming to work with them and really realizing that they hold, just like you said, they are the map. They're literally the map. And I always teach that our bodies are literally the subconscious. Like, everybody's heard me talk about the subconscious that listens to this podcast. And I think that sometimes we focus on the subconscious or the body as the trauma and all the things that are wrong. But also it also holds the light, like you were saying, and you can follow the light in your body. Like, where is there ease when you're leaning into things? Where is there, right? There's just so much wisdom the body holds. And if it really holds the whole story, not just the trauma story, but also the abundance story and the integrative story, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And taking on that thread a little bit more, I feel like our body guides us through our feelings and sensations. So, it's we are spirits in body, right? And I believe, the only goodie of being fully embodied is to experience and use all our senses, right? Our physical senses, and then our extra six senses, if you will. And it is, I believe that our inner guidance is directing us by feelings and sensations in our body. Culturally, I think a lot of people, maybe not everybody who's listening now, but there's a majority of people that they just don't pay attention when they're holding their breath, or when they feel this resistance that pulls them back, or that kind of flow opening. I mean, that is one of the ways our body guides us. If I like thinking about our heart holding the compass, directing us towards our light, and our body is going to the left, to the right, 5 steps forward. Hold on, pause for a minute.
That is the truth.
Right? And pause for a lot.
Pause for a lot until you get the point.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where our inner wisdom is. Sometimes it seems so complicated. And if we just think that we have physical senses and then these extraordinary senses that are guiding us, and the one goal is to kind of just say, hey, this is me, right here in my own beautiful self, regardless of what I look like, air quotes there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest gift we can do, because otherwise, we're just looking around going, now what? Now what? And that gives our power away,
Yes, yes, yes. I think that that point is so huge for a lot of the women that I work with who are building businesses online, those of us that are doing that. And this aspect of we give our authority away when that head, when the mind is looking at everybody else and this is this is what you have to do. And we end up giving that journey away and creating so much resistance and pain and suffering for ourselves, because we forget that the guide, that inner compass, like you said, is our heart, and it will guide us. But do we trust it?
Right. Do we trust it? It's more, and I'm sure you're doing this with your peeps, how do you trust it? How do you build the muscle memory of trust, trusting in your heart, so you're not kind of going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like, how do we keep feeling that full body yes and knowing when it's right? I was reading something probably pandemic time a while ago, right? And it was how women spend a lot of time, they have an idea, they wait for it to get perfect, and they spend years and years and years, and they're like, I have an idea. And this happens, I think, not only with women in business, but just women in general. Yeah. They wait till it's perfect. Meanwhile, their body's going, yes, share it, share it, share it. Like, bring it out into the world, birth it into the world, right? Men, on the other hand, go, I got an idea. Let me get a boardroom together. I'm sorry, grand generalizations here. But,
I get you.
And it's
how we've been trained.
Right. We've been trained that way. So what if we learn a muscle memory that just, it's like there's that cue, and I think it's unique for each of us. There's that cue in the body that goes, oh yeah, full throttle forward, baby. This is it. And it's that heart yes, or that full body yes, whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think that yes is governed by feelings and sensations in our body. There's the gift.
Yeah. Yes. I think too, that aspect of, actually, I know it's not even just like I think in my head, but this aspect of, I teach a lot about feminine and masculine energy, yin yang energy, and the fact that we were trained so much as women, feminine core beings, yin core beings, to not all of us, but a lot of us are that way, to be so masculine. And I always describe it as masculine shields coming up from the root and protecting our feminine heart, right? Like we protect this incredibly magnetic, beautiful, authentic, like warm, gooey, emotional aspect of us that is our essence. And we protect it with these walls and these, like, our logic and our reasoning and all of these things. And yeah, like I think that so much of that process is trusting your body, but also realizing where we've associated ourselves to be someone that we're not, a lot of us, and recognizing like that practice. I believe it's a practice, like a spiritual practice, to release that, the false, yang energy shields. Not that we don't ever have masculine energy or yang energy in our life. We do. But when it's overtly that, and we're trying to operate in the world as men, like what happens when we just operate from our heart? And we're so magnetic.
Right.
We're so magnetic.
Right.
It's incredible.
Right. I mean, can I trip out on this a little bit more with you?
Absolutely.
So, body language, right? If any of you do energy medicine, you're probably understanding this, but there's really simple body language cues that drop us into a more feminine space or a more masculine energy space. And also of the mind and of the heart and of the body, right? So simple cues like if you feel like you're kind of leaning forward, you want a linear kind of conversation, your eyes are wide open and you're looking, you're dropping into a more masculine energetic, right? Versus just kind of sitting kind of like into your hips and softening your eyes and holding space, which is almost kind of like a present moment experience, but so much comes out of that space. That is more of the feminine energy. And I always like to, like, if I'm leaning into something, we as women are so trained to pull up this masculine bravado.
Yeah.
And be busy, because busy's this weird badge of courage.
It is weird.
Right? It's like all of it. Like we just keep, you can see my body language. I keep leaning forward into it. Like that's, it's yang energy, which is useful. Otherwise we would never get off the couch.
Right.
But, it's like just noticing what you're doing with your body can give us huge muscle memory cues of what energetic we're pulling in.
Yes.
Right? Soften eyes, drop into your hips, kind of stay in a upright, not backwards or forwards, but, just in that yielding kind of uprightness that happens when we're
receiving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because that feminine energy is all about receptivity, and we don't again, we don't go into our heart because we don't trust. So if we're not going into our heart, it's because we're not trusting that we're held, that we're safe, and we might not feel safe in our bodies or in our homes or whatever. But we have to feel safe, held, secure to be able to lean back and to receive. And for so many of us, we didn't have that growing up, possibly. And so we've been trained, like you're saying, that body language of like lean forward into life, like go after life, like go and attack the day. And it's a whole, like you're saying, it's a whole other retraining of muscle memory to learn to lean back in life and to feel like that's safe. And to have your heart open is genuinely a practice, I believe.
I think the practice also begins with just knowing that you're safe inside your body. This is our vessel right here in the body. Yeah. I'm getting all kinds of tingles as we talk. This is beautiful.
Love. Yeah, this is gorgeous. I hope everyone listening is enjoying. I know they are. Will you share with us about your specific modality that you call Soulscape? Will you share with us about that?
Yeah. Again, backup story, right? So, as you know, I tend to compartmentalize things, and I think compartmentalize job, career, love, who I am, what makes me excited. Like the job was here, and the things that I loved were over here, somewhere else, right? And there's that weird kind of split, and I'm sure all of us have felt this over the times. Like there's just this stuff that I love and this stuff that you have to do. Right? There's the head heart thing again, right?
The head and heart, yep.
And I love doing healing work. I think that really is, if I had to identify myself somewhere, that would be the closest thing, right? But I guess about 10 years ago, I was sitting, I was in a shamanic journey, and I was feeling particularly off. And I said, my heart intention was, help me know what my next step was. And I think in my head it was like, learn a new modality, do this, open this, create this, something, right? And in this modality, or in the journey, so clearly I felt, and my eyes are closed, I'm drumming, but I felt this big pink book drop on my lap. And I was like, wow. And the book was flipping, and I saw chapters like your inner wisdom, your soulscape, or whatever. I can't remember all the categories in this book, but the cover flipped down and it said, painting the landscape of your soul. And I was like, I just got a message from the divine, or directives from the divine, as I like to call them. And I was like, oh. And, to be really honest, words and language are not my strong point. Like, Spirit was asking me to write a book. And I'm like, write a book? I'm like, you got to be kidding, and and I really kind of came out of the journey, and I do believe that you can always say to Spirit, yeah, not now. Like, I do believe we have our own authority and don't have to be led around that way.
Yeah. We have say.
Always say. We can navigate and negotiate, I'd like to think.
Yes, negotiation.
And, I walked out of the journey and I was like, oh, I was stunned. And so as Spirit does these things, I think pretty soon right after that, I was going to a shamanic gathering, and I'm sitting around circle of amazing women. And I started having this conversation. I think we were all checking in about what one insight did we want to share to the group. I was like, well, Spirit told me to write a book. And I was like, I'm afraid, all that not good enough stuff was floating up. And I was like, words are not my language. Color, shape, and form, no problem. The unconscious language, no problem. Written word. And the woman sitting next to me said, well, I help people write books. I'll help you. And I was like, I don't have a lot of money to do this. She goes, no, my gift to Spirit. And so she helped me organize my thoughts. And when I could say the creation of the book was all met exactly like that. Like, people kept showing up and saying, can I help you? And there's that heart's yes, like, flow just happened and everything happened there. And so it was at that point. And so the book is Painting the Landscape of Your Soul. That's the book that I had published. And that book is a combination of shamanic concepts, of Taoist concepts, of energy medicine. And more importantly, it was me recognizing the power of using creativity as a healing modality. Yeah. Because most of us think creativity or artist or blah, blah. Again, it's one of those things off to the side. But there are many of us who yearn to access that creative part of us. And I think that's a very feminine energy.
Oh, yeah.
It's another one of these birthing kind of energies. It's, how we, in shamanism, creativity is used to recreate a new vision. It's used to kind of manifest the next dreaming, if you will. I'm really paraphrasing here, but that's the potential and the potentiality of the healing creative aspects. And that's really what I think Spirit rerouted my life right there. Because then it was like, okay, that got created, and now I want to bring it out to the world. So I think I went on a tangent, but you get where I'm going.
I'm here for all of that. I love that. It's super inspiring to me on so many levels. Like, I'm like, yes. I think that you're so right. The more that we are tapped into our creativity, the more we are in feminine energy. So those of us who would say we're feminine core beings, like, how creative are we actually being? I don't know if you know human design at all. So any of us that are generators or manifesting generators, like, one of the biggest tips that they say for us to, like, be tapped into that creative magnetic energy is to do something creative first thing every day. And I love that. And actually, when you look at my human design chart, I don't have really, like, consistent motivation anywhere other than to be creative. And so for a long time, I was trying to, like, make life be like, I'm motivated by money, and I'm motivated by saving the world, and I'm motivated by all these things. And really, like, the only thing you can see in my chart that's consistent, it's not that I'm never motivated by those other things, but the only thing that's consistent for me is to just be creative for the sake of being creative, because that's what I'm here to do. Is to create new things. And right now that's really being channeled and honed into, like, creating a new paradigm and creating this, like, there's so many things I have going on behind the scenes of wanting to create more like communal type living and living off of the land and all these kind of things of, it's not new concepts, but recreating something that has existed for a long time. But yeah, I also find it interesting because my language is words. So I love talking to you and you being like, what? Like, I can't write a book. And I'm over here, and I've known I'm meant to write books since I was literally I think I was 10 years old. I've known, like, you're meant to write. Like, that's just what you're going to do. And recently I've been on a journey of being like, okay, fine. Like, I'll do it. And it's, like, just so interesting because it's been more of a, I'm afraid of my power than, like, I'm scared that I'm not going to be good enough. It's almost like, but if I do this, I'm really stepping into who I know I've always been. Right. And those words are going to last forever. But I've always felt like so much of my creative outlet is with words. And I love, though, the stretch that because it's all like, right, like one I look at it at least as like, it's this all, you tap into all of these different ways of expression.
Right.
And you were so well versed in one area of expression, and then you're tapping into this other area and stretching that capacity to hold your expression in so many different forms, which I love on every level. And I feel like for me, as you were talking, I was like, ooh, yes, but the opposite. Like, I was like, ooh, I want to tap more into this soulscape aspect, because that's not something that comes necessarily. I mean, I'm sure it comes naturally in a sense for everyone, but like, it's not something I would run to first, right? Like, I would run to express myself in words, where you were like, I would run to express myself with this unconscious language of shape and form and color. And I love that this mirroring, because I'm like, ooh, I want to dive into that more.
Right.
Where have you seen the power of this medicine in the people that you've worked with? Like, can you share with us any story? I mean, you said you had hundreds of stories.
I do.
But can you share any that really stick out to you?
Well, I'm going to share two, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
One was with a participant, and one was me. And I think I'm going to share mine first. Okay. I think, those of us who are on the path and doing the work, sometimes we think, oh yeah, I'm pretty clean. I've gone through a lot of stuff, right? And I was with friends, and there was a group of us that would gather for 5 days and do this embodied creative process in the way that I put it together, because it's always so much better in community, because otherwise, I'll go eat some corn chips and drink tea and be done. So anyway, we're doing this thing. And at some point, so part of the soulscape process is really just listening to what shows up. Don't question it, within reason, but don't question it. So the directives, again, if you will, put the paper on the floor, fill a tray out with paint, put your feet in the paint, and start walking. It's like, okay, well, that sounds really juicy and fun, but why? My head's going, why?
Explain this to me.
Right. I did this for 4.5 days. I walked miles on this piece of paper, just walked, was really present with whatever I was feeling, but just was walking. And then we all agreed we would end at noon. So like 11:30, 11:45, something like that. I had something up on my desk that just said "you," right, the letter U, and I threw it in that impulsive, intuitive, in the flow kind of moment. I threw it on a piece right in the center of this painting, and this sounds really horrible, but I started stabbing it like with a paintbrush, and I suddenly realized it was shame. Like self-hatred, like whatever was still lodged inside me. Because, again, I believe our body guides us to only what we can handle. Like, if you would ask me, paint your self-hatred, I'd be like, yeah, I'm done. I'm good. No worries. But
none of that in here.
But, you open that space, and, that there was like permission for that to surface up. And I remember sitting back on my haunches going, wow, there was a lot of self-hatred that was still tucked in there. And that for me was remarkable, because if it's happening with me, who I think I'm well versed in my XYZ, it still got me to a place that my mind would never bring me to. But my body and heart knew that this was another untangling that needed to happen so I can live fully me. I mean, that happened 7 years ago, maybe more. Wow. It is still really, arm raising, deep truth that is still like, okay, there may be more. I hope so, because how much fun to keep clearing out this stuff. That's
beautiful.
So that was one piece. And another one was this very simple thing that I was working with somebody, and At the time, we were in person, da da da. We were painting on the wall. And this woman was painting with a super tiny paintbrush. Like, I have tiny ones. I have paintbrushes that are like mops. You could do whatever you want. Well, expression is expression. I mean, how often do we give ourselves to fully be big?
Yeah, true.
Right?
That.
Right? So big paper, big brushes. But anyway, she's got this like brush with 3 hairs on it. And she's painting really tiny, and she's, body language, right? She's contracting, she's not breathing, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so what is it that your body wants right now? And she's, I can't tell you. I said, well, let's, I brought her into the process. Come into your body, come into your belly. What are you feeling? What's the first thing that pops into your mind? And she was like, black. I'm like, oh, okay, well, grab some black paint. And she's like, I use kids paint, like tempera paint and cheap paper. So it wasn't about art supplies. And she was like, I cannot pick up black. Black makes me want to vomit. Oh, wow. It's like, right? Again, subconscious. Like there was some story. I didn't need to know it. She didn't need to know it, but her body, heart knew, or maybe I should just say soul, knew that this was something to give some space for. Right? We tuck so much in the closet. This one just needed a little flashlight on it. So we got her little paintbrush, and I got a little water bottle cap, and I put black paint on it. I said, just try it once. Right? Put it in here. Again, it's moving energy. That's all it is an energy expression. And I stood next to her. She, dipped like a little bit of a pin point and put it on her paper. I was like, how do you feel? She goes, I'm okay. I said, okay, just keep doing that. Right. And I walked away. I came back like 15 minutes later. She's got a mop brush and she is just slinging black.
Yeah. I'm so happy for her.
I know, right? Like, it's like, we think these barriers are, sometimes we don't think we can scale them. Sometimes they're like massive. Sometimes they're, most of the time, they're these things in our head, and so whatever that permission is for expression is just, there's the forest for the trees, and you stepping in the forest and it's like, oh, it's just a bunch of trees, but, the mind like makes this thing up. She then, because I do believe all of this is energetics as well, her life changed. Like that very simple action of putting paint to paper started moving energy. And she started to realize it was a really big deal for her to be out around people. And she actually just started coming out into the world, like socializing a little bit. She started writing. Like it was, that was pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
Sometimes these things happen so quickly, and sometimes, it's a journey, like for the rest of us. But they were 2 really remarkable stories. This woman is now like a pretty big deal journalist doing, journalism in some scary places, like,
oh my gosh.
I know. And I know that we have all these amazing stories about, those amazing stories, but I think that happens for everybody in their own way. I don't think transformation has to be all ta-da's, it's just like, oh yeah, okay. I can look in the mirror and say, hey, you're okay today. That's a transformational moment, right?
Absolutely. And like you were saying with your own story, it's not like the ending of your story. You were like, and then somebody called me and offered me $7 million. Like it was this really beautiful moment for yourself, which most of the time that's the transformation we're actually craving, is to actually feel that love towards ourselves and full acceptance of like, I accept you, giant aspects of shame that I just walked around for 4 miles on a piece of paper right? Like that's the beauty of, I think, at least what I'm picking up from your work, is it is so highly transformational for the individual.
Right.
And it is about the soul. And a lot of times, I mean, like pretty much always, I feel like for me and for my clients, you can't explain even in words, like those transformations of the soul, or even just the unveiling, like the unconscious aspects of the soul and integrating them, but then also like moving forward with parts of your soul that are like, this is your mission. And you're like, oh, this is terrifying. Like all of those things are so personal.
Right.
And we don't always have words to say what they meant. Like, I love that you said about yours, like still to this day, I have the hair stand up on my arms because of how I look at it as like just all of the realms collapse in that one moment, and you have complete awareness of what truly is, right? For me, I just feel like I'm supposed to share this story,
Please,
but
please.
I know you don't know a lot about my story, but 3 years ago when I was pregnant with my daughter, 3.5 years ago now, I went septic. So I nearly died from an infection. And when I was like, she was in utero, she was only 7 weeks. She's a miracle. I'm a miracle. It's all crazy. But in that hospital bed, I was like going in and out of consciousness. And I had this vision that I feel like I explain it in words. And I have that same moment of like, you could never understand like what this is for me. It was like this transcending all of the matrix, transcending all of my own matrices I'm making, transcending all of this like unawareness of who and what I actually am. And in this vision I had, so I didn't even know what I was really going through. I was like completely unaware, but now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. But in the moment, I was talking to a group of women, and I was talking to them about their dead dreams. And I was saying how, like I was telling the story of what would happen, but I didn't know at the time this is what was going to happen. But I told this story about how I was running a nonprofit at the time, which I was, and how I left, and how I was really religious, and I left religion and I left this nonprofit, and I lost all of my relationships. And I like went through this giant dark night of the soul, which is true. I did all of these things. And I was telling the story about how I did all of this, and I let everything die, like literally everything about myself, everything I thought who I was, everything in my life, every relationship, I let it die. And I surrendered to death. And when I surrendered to death is the only time I actually truly knew what life was. And I was telling this story to these women, and I was saying, what stories, what dreams in your life have you fully let die that are ready to be rebirthed? And I was essentially standing in as this shaman of death and in life and rebirth. And anyways, I woke up from this wherever I was in the future, a different realm, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I woke up, and my husband came in the room, and I was just like, I know exactly what's meant to happen. I'm meant to quit our nonprofit. Everyone's going to hate us. We're leaving the church, like all of these things. And every single one of those things happened. All of it came true. And now I'm in a place where I'm speaking those truths, and I'm being this like facilitator of death and rebirth. Because I actually experienced it in my somatic body. Like I literally nearly died and was reborn. Anyways, but that's my experience, where I look back and I'm like, yeah, like no one could understand. I mean, we all have those moments, but that's what I'm talking about, of those moments where you're just like, this was for no one else. Like it didn't need to be this giant. Then the next day, Jenna became a millionaire and a best-selling author. Actually, the next day, everyone hated me and thought I was a literal lunatic. So like, that's not what happened at all. But what happened for me is this like pinnacle point I look back at, and I still can step into that embodiment and feel it in my body, and remember like in a cellular memory way of like, this is who you are. Like, this is what you came here to do. And anyways, I felt like I was supposed to share that story.
Absolutely. I mean, that's powerful. That is so powerful. And do you mind if I just share a little more about this?
Oh, yeah.
I sometimes think that people think we have to have these big pinnacle moments. And because I think that's how we've been trained. And yeah, I do believe that if we're really not quite paying attention to where spirit's leading us, we are going to have these, Dark night of the soul, on the edge of dying moments.
Yeah, like
I mean,
did.
really. Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And sometimes they are just little invitations over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to honor both. You know,
Yeah.
if we, from this moment forward, agree to yourself to pay attention to all those feelings and sensations and nuances of how our soul is guiding us through the senses of our body, then, we're just walking that beautiful path, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to that acupuncture concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are points that will pull you out of death. The closer they get up to the body, the closer those points are transitional points. Like you can live or die right here, your choice.
Yeah.
So there's both and, but what if you just agree just to keep following where your body's leading you?
Totally.
And I also have been drugged through the ringer by spirit, and so I get that. But I'm wondering if it's a paradigm change.
Totally.
I think younger women that I've met are like totally paying attention to their body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying none of us on this call are, but like they have less of the story of why not to listen to the body. They're listening more, and it's going to be curious to see, also these young women, at least the ones I'm talking to, are going, I am amazing, and I am filled with light, and I am filled with potential, and it's like, it's beautiful to watch these women hold that. Now, I'm sure there's going to be little, journeys that they're going to have to go on too, but yeah, I think in listening to your story, I guess I'm asking all of us, what if we just started paying attention to the little signs and not
100%. Yeah. And like in my story leading up to that, I wasn't listening to my body.
Yeah.
And then my journey post that has been, I have to listen to my body, which has been a whole embodiment of my body isn't wrong. Like, again, I came from a religion where we were taught our bodies were evil. So that was a whole paradigm shift of believing that my body had any wisdom at all.
Right.
And also that like it was just so unconscious. Like we just weren't taught how to even believe that our bodies were worthy of anything. Like, so I think that, definitely 100%, it's improving so vastly. And I think that a lot of times I'm a 3-line in human design. So it's kind of like, I will go into the fire for you and then tell you what not to do.
Right. Me too.
And I'm unconsciously doing that. And I'm like, great. I'm glad I signed up for that. But also like, I am glad I signed up for that. So yeah. And for so many of us, right, it's like that journey of when we can learn to follow those nudgings. And when we get that resistance and we're like fighting so hard, but like, no, it has to be this way.
Right.
It's really just like that invitation into like, let that version of you that thinks that has to be your life or your whatever, let it die. Like, let it just shut off, because what's going to be rebirthed is so much more in alignment and going to feel so much more in flow, like you're saying, than this thing that you're trying to force to happen, which I find a lot of women still struggle with that a lot.
Right. That's what I like about the embodied creative processes, because it's not of the mind. So, you can do some journaling. It's like, what would it be like to die? But if you set intention and a sacred container, and you just allow your body to guide you that way, like, you'll go to depths, because the mind's going to be like, no, I'm hanging on a cliff, I'm not going anywhere. But your body's like, oh yeah, I die with every breath. I can help you with this.
Yep.
I can help you understand it, so it's not so scary. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's so much wisdom that we've packed into this, into this episode. I love it on all accounts. Before we close up, is there anything that I'm going to have you share how everybody can find you and your work and all these things, but is there any like message you really feel coming through? If there's anything else that you want to add about where you are, or for the people that are listening, anything else coming through?
Well, actually, what keeps coming through is to do a short breathing meditation. Can I share with you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this really short, and I'm going to say that this is, I think it's one of the things that I'll make sure that is part of the offering that I'll give your audience as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's important just to get a sense of what we're all feeling, talking about. Like, what does it feel like to come back into the body and just notice? What does it feel like to come back in and feel what it feels like when your heart sings yes? If that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to invite you all to soften your eyes, because when your eyes are soft, you are in your heart space already. Feel the weight of your body on the chair. Feel yourself in your hips. Just feel the weight of your body. And allow your breath to come. Actually, before we even do that, just notice what you feel in your body right here. Notice tightness, breathing, where your head is. Notice, just notice. Yeah. Now bring your awareness to your breath. Bring it down to your belly. Bring it down to your hips. All the way down to your feet, and wiggle your toes. And do that just a few times, and just notice what it feels like as you do that. Do you feel a little heavier? A little stiller, perhaps? Do you feel like you can take a deeper breath? And know that whatever answers you're getting with those questions is perfectly okay. Now place your hands on your heart. Feel the rising and falling of your chest. Feel into the beating of your heart. And then drop into the place underneath all that. That is the light of who you are. And notice that when you connect to that light, it kind of fills your whole body. Every cell. Now go ahead and say to yourself, my name is, and say the name that you like to go by. And just notice that how that changes your field, how that changes your physical experience. Now go ahead and say, my name is, and I like to use the name Harry. Unless your name is Harry, then pick another name. And just notice how your body responds right there. Go back and say, my name is, and again, say the name that you like to go by. And one more time, let's go back to Harry. Great. And just take a moment and reflect on how your body feels different with that, yes, this is my name, and no, this is not my name. Generally, when you say your name, that's an experience of your heart's yes. That'll tend to feel a little bit more expanded, have a little bit more of a curiosity, a little bit more softness, versus the other name, which is going to be like a little bit more contracting. And again, everything in between, right? So that in itself is a really simple way to create a muscle memory of following your heart's yes. But first you have to get out of your head and back into your body. And that's what the breathing is. Right? Breath, belly, feet. And then connecting into yourself. I mean, how often we don't always just feel into our heart, into our, it's just being present with ourselves is such a gift. And then to keep playing with that, where is my heart saying yes? And I always say, start simple. Don't try to change your life right now, right? Create a muscle memory of trust So I always say, should I wear this or should I wear that? We're already doing these things already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Should I wear this today? Yes or no, right? Practice that. Like, learn the dialogue of your body that's unique to you.
Yeah. I love that. I'm interested to know those of you that did that exercise what your experience was. So feel free to share it with us or give us feedback. For me, I noticed that when I was saying my name is Jenna, my awareness went right into my gut, into my sacral and my root. And when I was like, my name is Harry, all of my attention and awareness came right to my head. Yeah. Like it was like all of the energy was like boom, in the head.
Right.
And then like when I was just like, my name's Jenna, it's like duh, like it was just in my lower body, which is so great.
Yeah, it's like your body's like, yeah, truth, in my body, not truth up here in my head.
In my head, right? Which how many of us can relate to that of like, and then trying to convince ourselves that it's truth. Like we're like, it's definitely truth because I'm worrying about it so much. And it's like, actually, no, you're just in your head.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So thank you for sharing that with us. And would you now share with us how we can, this will be in the show notes, of course, those of you listening, but where we can find you, where you're most active. And I know that you had an offering that you wanted to share as well with us.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm all over the socials, but you can also go to DaminiCelebre.com. There's a lot of juicy info in the blog. So you can, just dive in and out of embodied creative practices, meditation practices. They're all meditation with air quotes all around them. But there's a lot of stuff right there. I believe the offering is more an expanded version of Your Heart's Yes, because I think that's just such a yummy thing to teach yourself, teach your children, teach your neighbors, like spread it around. The more that we can stay embodied with ourselves, I think the world's a better place. We're not as reactionary and all of that as well. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here. This has been so delightful and so nourishing.
I feel the same way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I hope everyone enjoys this and we'll see you next time. Please go follow Damini and all of her work. Get familiar with her incredible offerings and wisdom because she has so much to offer this world.
Thank you.